Take a day off every once in a while. I wanted to talk about Antonio Gates. And I'm going to play some highlights in the background of Antonio Gates because the guy should be a first ballot Hall of Famer, and it's not even close. It's not even close. And you could talk about the limited PEDs or whatever, but if you just look at what he accomplished in his time as a San Diego Charger, I know he was up in LA for a year, but as a San Diego Charger, the guy was unbelievable. I mean, he was obviously part of my childhood growing up watching Chargers football as a San Diego Charger fan. Again, no longer a fan because they moved to Los Angeles. But it was really cool to watch him play and how he elevated the tight end position and really picked up where Tony Gonzalez let off. Tony Gonzalez really changed the game for the tight end position in the National Football League. And Antonio Gates carried the torch. I mean, there's been some great tight ends in the history of the National Football League that are in the Hall of Fame. Tony Gonzalez, Shannon Sharp, Kellen Winslow, Ozzie Newsome, Mike Ditka. But a lot of those guys fail in comparison to a guy like Antonio Gates. If you go on Pro Football Reference, Antonio Gates has the fourth highest Hall of Fame number. Tony Gonzalez is number one, and then Rob Gronkowski, who just recently retired, is not eligible for the Hall of Fame yet, is number two, followed by Travis Kelce and Antonio Gates. The guy should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And I know he didn't win a Super Bowl, but you know who else didn't win a Super Bowl? Tony Gonzalez. Guy never won a Super Bowl. If you start breaking down his stats and you start looking at how it compares, he's top five in almost every statistical category for a tight end. Receptions, he's third all time at 955. Gonzalez has the number one spot, then Jason Witten, then it's Antonio Gates. If you look at yards, it's Tony Gonzalez, Jason Witten, Antonio Gates. If you look at touchdowns, Antonio Gates has the most touchdowns in the National Football League all time for tight ends at 116 touchdowns. He's even got one of the longest touchdowns, 72 yards. No, not really. I mean, there's a lot of longer ones, but he's top five in almost every statistical category. He's fourth all time in games played in the NFL. He missed a significant amount of time with his turf toe that he had. But the fact that he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer is so ridiculous to me. It is such a joke. This is why I'm anti-Hall of Fame. I'm anti-Hall of Fame all the time because of things like this. I'm showing ads right now, trying to fix that problem. You got the highlights. It is what it is. I'm not a big fan of the Hall of Fame because of some things that, some biases that are used in how to get into the Hall of Fame. Here's what Antonio Gates had to say about not being in the Hall of Fame on a first ballot. And again, he's probably going to be in the Hall of Fame, but the reasoning that some of these entities give, I think, is such crap. And again, this is why I don't like Hall of Fames. I don't care. I don't care about them. But Antonio Gates not being in the Hall of Fame on a first ballot is absurd. Absolutely absurd. I get the PED use, right? I get that he didn't win a championship. Tony Gonzalez never won a Super Bowl either. That is such a terrible argument, by the way. Well, he didn't win a Super Bowl. Well, you know how hard it is to win a Super Bowl? You know how much in football it's about like the team, not necessarily the individual player. It's the same thing with quarterbacks. Let's not talk about Dan Fouts being an all-time quarterback because he never won a Super Bowl. Same thing with Phillip Rivers. Well, guess what? There's more than just being a quarterback to a football team. It takes a lot to win a Super Bowl. It takes a lot to win a championship. There's a lot of things that have to go right for teams to be able to do it. And some teams have been fortunate enough to go on runs where they can win multiple in a year or multiple during a dynasty type run. But here's what Antonio Gates had to say about not being a first ballot Hall of Famer. I feel like I let the people who went through the journey with me down, like your family, the people who understands what's beneath the surface, all the work you put in, the coaching staffs, the players you played with. They're like, "What?" So I think that's one of those things where you're like, "Man, in due time, we'll get there, man." Did a great job in really shaping what the tight end position is. Again, picking up what Tony Gonzalez did and then carrying it and creating what the tight ends are today. Creating that opportunity for guys like Travis Kelce and Rob Gronkowski, George Kittle. I mean, you start going down the list of all these tight ends that could do both things. I mean, Antonio Gates was not just a reception tight end. The guy could block in the run game. He has he's could do a lot of different things in the NFL. And again with Hall of Fames, if you can't tell the story of the position that he played, so tight end, if you cannot tell the story of a tight end in the National Football League without mentioning Antonio Gates' name, he's a Hall of Famer. And to just keep him out on the first ballot is utterly ridiculous. It makes no sense. Antonio Gates finished his career, played from 2003 to 2018. He was an 8-time Pro Bowler. He started for 12 of those seasons. He was a first-team All-Pro selection 3 times. Played in 236 games, started 190 of them, had 955 receptions for 11,841 yards with a all-time record of 116 touchdowns for a tight end. His longest was 72. He'll get in there. I know he'll get in. It's unfortunate that he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, but it's really disheartening. And that's why I don't like the games that are played with Hall of Fames. I mean, like Kurt Warner's in the Hall of Fame. You can argue that as much as you want. I'm not a big believer in Kurt Warner being a Hall of Fame quarterback. I think a lot of this now, which is kind of ridiculous, is how much media time you get. And if you're in the media and you're in the presence of the media, all of a sudden you get moved to the front of the line for the Hall of Fame because of the writers that vote in different outlets. And you see it in all walks of sports. And to me, that's where it just starts getting it gets to a point for me where I'm like, all right, what are we doing here? I like the historic significance of the Hall of Fame for all sports. I love the history in the museum and everything about telling the story of the sport of everybody that came before, what you currently watch, right? And as a sports fan, that's cool and that's fun. So I'm not against going to visit the Hall of Fame. I think the process really sucks. I don't necessarily think media members should be able to dictate who's in the Hall of Fame and who's not. I agree, Eric Bessel. Philip should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He probably won't either. I mean, they'll use the Super Bowls against Philip. But, look about how long 619 Bengals fan is 100% right on Twitter. How long has Eric Allen been left out until he finally got in? I mean, he should have been way, way before. We've talked with Clark Judge multiple times on these shows, and he gets it. I mean, he knows he's been in those meetings. He's got to pick, but it's just I don't know. I don't like the process. Maybe that's the thing when you get older, like you're super into the Hall of Fame. I'm not. I know people that love talking Hall of Fame. I don't. But I do get disgruntled when I think guys that deserve it should be in, especially as a first ballot guy. You always feel jabbed again because he played in San Diego, right? I mean, if he played for the Dallas Cowboys, would he be in? I guess not. I mean, Jason Witten's not in, but Antonio Gates was better than Jason Witten in a lot of different categories. The only thing Witten's got Gates in is games played and games started. And a couple more, and obviously some more receptions because he played a little bit longer in the National Football League. But I would take Gates over Witten, but Witten's another guy that should be in the Hall of Fame, and he's not yet.